brought by Christians to a believing Muslim. I'm a believing Muslim.
The claim of Muhammad that God sent him is false, that he's not a true prophet.
Yeah, so
Welcome, everyone, to this highly anticipated debate between Sam Shamoun and Dr. Andani, where we'll be discussing one of the most pivotal questions in interfaith dialogue: does the Quran confirm the Bible? On one side, we have Sam Shamoun, a well-known Christian apologist and scholar, who has dedicated much of his life to defending the truth of the Bible. On the other side, Dr. Andani, a respected scholar with a PhD in Islamic studies, who will present the Muslim perspective on this crucial issue. This debate will explore the key theological differences between Christianity and Islam, particularly focusing on the relationship between the Quran and the Bible. Does the Quran uphold and confirm the Bible as a sacred and trustworthy text, or does it challenge and contradict the Christian scriptures? Let's engage in this discussion with respect and open minds as we examine the arguments and evidence put forward by both sides. Without further ado, let's begin the debate.
What was the Quran confirming in the possession of the Jews and Christians? That they're supposed to uphold not only the Torah and Gospel, all the revelation given to them.
So within the Christian canon, there is content in there that is extant revelation from what Jesus taught.
What is your criterion to determine that the statements in these books contain that revelation? Because you assume the Quran is revelation, and it's the standard. This is true, this is not.
The Islamic dilemma is called the Islamic dilemma because it is an internal critique brought by Christians against believing Muslims. The Islamic dilemma is not an academic argument. It is a polemical, religious, theological argument. Okay. So a theological argument is brought by Christians to a believing Muslim. I'm a believing Muslim.
The claim of Muhammad that God sent him is false, that he's not a true prophet.
Yeah, so the Islamic dilemma presumes that the interlocutor already has an established belief in the Quran.
I am aware that you think that within the Quran you have the means by which to refute the Islamic dilemma, and I'm showing you no, you're actually confirming the Islamic dilemma if you understand the point I'm making, and maybe it's my fault that I'm not as clear. You think the Quran is revelation, and therefore that Christians and Jews who believe that the God of Abraham sent these prophets, if they are consistent, they're going to have to believe that God sent Muhammad, and the most obvious thing to do is follow him. The Christians come back and say, well, hold on. Since you claim that the same God of Abraham sent you and that your message agrees with the prophets, well, here are the scriptures that we have in our possession from the prophets. We don't see you consistent with them, and that's grounds to reject you as a false prophet. You're not coming back and saying, well, see, internally the Quran says the scriptures are not fully intact. So then you're using the Quran to show which parts are intact, and those parts that contradict the Quran are false, which then leads a Christian to say, exactly, that's what false prophets do. That's what Joseph Smith does. That's what everyone does. When the Bible exposes them as a fraud, see, your Bible's corrupt. Therefore, that's part of the dilemma. That's why we call Islamic dilemma.
No, so I think what's going on here is you're not actually employing the Islamic dilemma in its original way. So again,
that's all my debate.
Is the Islamic dilemma, is it an internal critique? Because that's what everybody says.
The dilemma is this: if the Quran sets forth the argument that the scriptures of the Jews and Christians that they have is to be determinative for them to know whether the Quran confirms what is with them, because that's the argument. Let's bring up my screen.
Okay, that's not the argument.
Well, let me show you. No, remember, you did concede there are various ways of interpreting these passages, so I'm not committed to your explanation. I'm going to
where does the Quran say? Yeah, okay, sure. Yeah.
The very passage you quoted, 242, you didn't quote 44. Let me go through this. And this is where you beg the question, saying, well, confirm doesn't mean everything, because here's always refuting it, which refuted actually nothing. It actually pushed the dilemma back further and caused more difficulties for your position, if I can articulate it. Here, let's go to 289. When there came to a book from the God confirming what is with them, and they aforetime prayed for victory over the unbelievers, when there came to them that they recognize they disbelieve in it, and the curse of God is on the believers. So that's one. But here, the one you quoted, 242 on the screen, let's read it in context. Children of Israel, remember my blessing wherewith I blessed you, and fulfill my covenant, and I shall fulfill your covenant, and have awe of me. And believe in that I have sent down, confirming that which is with you. See, here's the key. I'm sending this down that confirms what you have, so believe it. Now, it makes no sense to say, hey, believe what I sent down, confirming only a part what you have, because there are parts of it corrupt, because that would be grounds for the Jews to say, false prophet. And be not the first to disbelieve in it, and sell not my signs for a little price, and fear you me, and do not confound the truth of vanity, and do not conceal the truth wittingly. Well, you can't conceal something you don't have, Dr. Andani. And perform the prayer and pay the alms, and bow with those that bow. Will you bid others a piety and forget yourselves while you recite the book? Now, I don't know if you want to argue that in this context, the book refers to the heavenly one, because it's saying it's reciting that book. So even if it's a heavenly one, they must have a replica of it on earth for them to recite it. Now, since you quoted Sunni expositors, here I'm going to quote Qurtubi, whom you listed as one of those who thought that pretty much the New Testament is not the revelation of God. That means the Jews in the book here is the Quran, while what is with them refers to the Torah and the Gospel. So now we're back to the point I'm trying to make. I can give you more. It says confirming what is with them. And here, a Sunni exegete who doesn't believe the Bible is uncorrupt admits what they had was the Torah and Gospel. And the argument is this revelation is true because it confirms what you have. So my question to you is, here, what would the Torah and the Gospel be in their possession? And then how can you tell me it's only confirming a part of it? Because that would be an argument against Muhammad. They'll say, oh, so you're saying our scripture's corrupt? All the more reason you're a false prophet.
So number one, so when you make an internal critique, you grant the belief system of the other side, and you try to start with their belief system and you try to lead them out of their belief system. So the second thing is, these verses are not arguing, they're not saying the Quran is true because it confirms what is with you.
Yes, it is.
It's not. No, it's not an argument.
Yes, it is.
It's not an argument.
Reading. Sorry, Dr. Kandani. I'm not here to grant your reading. That's the argument.
Okay, so then I don't grant your reading, though.
Okay,
but I don't grant your reading. So then your dilemma doesn't work. If your dilemma relies on me granting every way you read the Quran, then your dilemma is just talking to yourself.
Okay, no. What it proves is the point we've been making. The Muslims cannot deal with their own scripture, so they have to argue the way that you're actually making my case. So I just want to make it clear how you're making my case. This is where you're up against the wall, because if you just read the text, someone comes to the text, and not assume what you're assuming, just reading it, the argument is clear. You should believe this book because it confirms what is with you. But then the Jews are saying, no, it doesn't. It contradicts your false prophet. You see the dilemma, so you have to deny it, which you're actually making my case. This is your dilemma. You can't grant the plain reading because there's nothing in the context that says it only confirms a part of what they have. Can you show me that in the verse?
Okay, so two things. Number one, there's the word because is not there. It's not saying believe in, it doesn't say believe in the Quran because it confirms. The phrase confirming what is with you is describing, it's more like an adjective. It's just describing what the Quran does. It's not saying believe in X because it confirms. You can check the Arabic. It's not there. So this is not presented as an argument the way you're claiming. Now, I get you read it that way. So I'm not obligated to read the verse that way, okay? Because actually what's going on here is the confirmation, and I've already talked about this, right? There are multiple reasons why it's not confirming everything. Because in Surah 2, right, there are beliefs that are with the Christians, such as the sonship of Jesus, which are denied. So you said that, you know, all these examples where the Quran opposes a biblical teaching, you use that as a data point for premise 2. But that data is also relevant against premise 1. So premise 1 is the Quran affirms the Bible or affirms the New Testament. Premise 2 is the Quran opposes the teachings of the New Testament. But all the data that you furnish for premise 2 is a knockdown of premise 1.
Okay.
And the only way you could argue, the only way that you could sort of make an arbitrary split and refuse to apply the same data to premise 1 that you put into premise 2 is by just being arbitrary, by having an assumed conclusion.
Doctor, you want to have your cake and eat it too. I want people to go back and hear your presentation. You yourself admitted that there is a minority view. I don't know how you determine it's a minority view because it's a significant minority view, and I can list Bukhari and others. But did we not hear you say that one plausible interpretation, which is not yours, is that yes, the Quran confirms the New Testament, and yet it doesn't teach divine subject in the Trinity. So your point is moot, because what the Quran would be attacking is the sonship attributed to Christ by Trinitarians. But you acknowledged that you can read the New Testament away, as Unitarians do, and deny the divine sonship of Christ in the Trinity. So that means even according to your argument, the Quran is not contradicting the contents of the New Testament. So why do you want your cake and eat it too?
So that's part of response number 3. My whole presentation was an elaboration of response number 1, and I said that. But if
what you're saying.
The thing is, Sam, you don't buy what I said, which is fine. Like, you have every right to be not convinced, and maybe the audience is not. That's okay. So if we end up, like I'm trying to show you, because remember, this is not an argument that Muslims invented to screw themselves over. This is an argument that you guys bring. So I'm saying, look, you bring the argument, and we Muslims have 3 walls of defense against this Islamic dilemma. And I'm defending on the front line on wall 1. And if you get past me, that's fine. Now you have to go deal with Ali Atai and Reza Shah Kazemi. That's wall 2. And then if you go through wall 2, you have to go to Sayyid Ahmed Khan with wall number 3. That's all I'm showing. And I'm holding up wall number 1. And I think I have the right to do that.
I'm going to get past your wall 1, but I'm just trying to show it does not follow just because chapter 2, 116 denies what you believe to be the sonship, that God has a son, that it's then denying the New Testament, even according to one of the positions that you articulate, which you don't accept. So granted, you don't accept that view, but it's still a view that nonetheless shows that the Quran can be denying the Trinity and still confirm the New Testament. So I'm going to ask you again, in light of these verses that speak of confirming what is with them, where do you get in these passages, not other passages that you assume, to 116, 117, I can give you chapter 9, verse 30. I know what the Quran says. You're assuming that because these statements say God has no son, and the Nasara, who say that Messiah is the son of Allah, Allah fight them, that means it's contradicting the New Testament. No, it would only mean it's contradicting their interpretation, which falls under one of the passages you cited, chapter 3, verse 78. They twist it with their tongues, but it doesn't mean that the Quran is attacking the text. So I'm trying to have you prove to me from these verses that it's saying the text is corrupt. You haven't done that, Dr. Andani, so I'm waiting for the evidence. Give it to me.
So again, Sam, you assume that the Quran confirms the New Testament. You assume it, and then you want evidence that it doesn't confirm it. But you have to first show me, where does the Quran say this 27-book New Testament is revealed by God? Where does it say that?
That way. It says,
where does it say that?
I'm going to answer you, Sir, I promise you I'm going to answer you.
Yeah, so where?
Okay. When it says confirming what was with them, and in 566-68, it says that the Jews and Christians are to hold the Torah and the gospel and all the revelation sent down to them. I'm going to ask you again, historically, what is that revelation given to them? See, I'm asking you, you're not answering. So I'm going to ask you again. It's not just Torah and gospel. You focus on the gospel. It goes beyond the gospel. It talks about what is with them, and they didn't just have the gospel. Even if you want to put in the apocryphal gospels, that's your dilemma. That means the Quran is confirming those apocryphal gospels, and therefore the canon of the Christians is bigger, not smaller. But specifically 566, 68, and I can bring in the study Quran, which is also modern Quran. I'm just telling you, it's not my view. So people think it's, no, you even admitted it in your opening. I want Christians to go back, clip this. He admitted, yes, there have been Muslims in the past, and there are also present Muslims who agree with my view. The Quran does not teach that the Old and New Testaments are corrupt, but they are the scriptures entrusted to the Jews and Christians. Now, Dr. Andani, even though you threw these two under the bus, I'll ignore them. I'll just go with what it says.
I mean, it doesn't say Old Testament. You're using these amateur translations.
No, it's not amateur.
Torah. It says Torah and Injil. I don't know why you use...
I'm going to challenge you, Dr. Andani. Show me where the Torah in your Quran is something that is defined as given to only one prophet. Where does it say that?
Well, in Surah 6, you have to realize that in the Meccan period, Torah and Gospel are not used. Only Kitab and Hikmah are used. So in Surah 6, it describes the Kitab given to Moses. Well, I'll get there.
Please get there.
Yeah, so Surah 6 describes... The word Torah is not in the Meccan part of the Quran. We have to keep that in mind. Torah and Injil only are used in the Medinan part of the Quran. So in the Meccan part of the Quran uses this generic term, Kitab. So it talks about the Kitab given to Moses, in which is guidance and light. Later on, a decade later, in Surah 5, it talks about the Torah, in which is guidance and light given to the children of Israel. So the description of the Kitab Musa and the Torah are basically the same, and their functions are the same. And if you don't believe me, go read the Harvard PhD dissertation.
You have authority not to the internal Quran.
Excuse me, can I finish?
What, sir? Because I'm trying to address that you didn't answer my point.
Well, I'm literally answering your point.
Yeah, let's let Khalil finish.
Well, you said interaction. Okay. Yeah, Mark, what do you want me to do? But go ahead.
I'm very happy to interact with you, and correct me if I'm wrong, Sam, but I've been trying to remain silent while you complete your thoughts, and I'm just trying to do the same thing. So,
can I just address that though? The point is,
I don't think Khalil finished his
I'm not
thought yet.
addressing his argument. I'm saying what he just said here. The only reason why I'm cutting you off is not because I want to cut you off. It's because I don't want you to just bring in other points. And when you bring a point, I want to address it immediately, lest it becomes lost. That's the only reason why I'm doing it. But finish your point, because I just want to repeat what you said.
You asked me, how do you know the Torah is the Kitab of Moses? Is that your question?
Yes.
Okay. So, if you track the Kitab Musa, if you track that throughout the Quran, everything it says about the Kitab of Musa, everything it does, okay? And then and the description, then if you track the word Torah and you track the Torah's description and its function, you're going to find that they're about the same thing. And if you don't believe me, because this is just a stream and I can't demonstrate it, go read the PhD dissertation of Professor Mohsen Goodarzi. He's a Harvard professor of Quranic studies. His entire PhD dissertation is on this very topic, that the Kitab of Musa is the Torah.
Okay. Now, can I address you? Can I address your point?
Sure.
Okay. I'll do you one better. I'll give you the Salaf, because again, remember, you went to a PhD, a modern academic. I'm going to go to pre-modern Islamic exegesis. I'm going to quote the Sunni position, where you're going to have Ibn Kathir admitting that the Salaf use the word Torah for all the scriptures of the people of the book. So you can appeal to modern scholar. I'm going to appeal to Muslim expositors, pre-modern scholarship. Let me get the article. So let me now address your point as I bring you up this article. I just got to put in the right words. First of all, I want everyone to see what you did. You went to chapter 6. You went to chapter 6 where it says a book is given to Moses. Folks, I want you to notice, it never said that book is the Torah. Then he made the logical leap in assuming, since that book has guidance and light, and the Torah has guidance and light, it must be the same book because given to the children of Israel. But then the gospel is also guidance and light. Does that mean the gospel is identical to the Torah? Even in your position, it's not identical. But more importantly, the Salaf say the Torah means more than the books of Moses. Here it is. Ibn Kathir on 757. Please don't throw Ibn Kathir under the bus, because you referenced him as one of your points that agrees with you. New Testament is not that revelation. Here it says, it was common in the speech of our Salaf that they described the books of the people of the two scriptures as a Torah, as some hadiths concur. So you haven't proven your case. So I'm going to come back to...
Sorry, Sam, I'm having trouble understanding the relevance of your point. So firstly, so what does the meaning of the Torah have to do with the present discussion? Number one. Number two, Sam, why are you appealing to a scholar, Ibn Kathir, when the same Ibn Kathir holds my position that the Bible is not preserved? Why are you making an appeal?
Wonderful, because since you appeal to Ibn Kathir, holds your position, your same authority now refutes the other part of your argument. That's why I'm appealing to it. But firstly,
which other part of my argument? Because I haven't talked about the Torah in my argument. My argument is about the Gospels and the New Testament. So if you accept Ibn Kathir, if you accept Ibn Kathir, then I don't know why we're here, because Ibn Kathir holds my position. He holds number one. And Qurtubi, by the way, holds position number one. He doesn't hold position number two.
You want me to address you? Want to talk over me? Because now you're cutting me off.
Yeah, let's let Sam come in here.
I know Danny's getting heated, but it's okay. We're professionals.
He's not getting heated. He's over there smiling, chilling, having a good time. Everyone's having a good time.
Okay, let me repeat.
I'm having fun, so please go ahead. I'm enjoying it.
I love you guys. You're a professional, man, and I'm honored to share the platform. I mean it, because I'm not. I'm just some internet apologist. So for you to share this platform when you actually rub shoulders with academics, that's actually, I consider that an honor. So God bless you. But coming back to the issue, if you remembered why I said it, because in your slide you mentioned Ibn Kathir, you mentioned Qurtubi. So since you appeal to them holding your position, I'm using now the very sources that you appeal to show they agree with you, to show now they disagree with you, that the Torah is limited to the books of Moses. Now, coming back to the first question, why did I mention it? Because you threw Muhammad Ahmed Samir under the bus saying, Torah doesn't mean the Old Testament. Yes, it does. According to Ibn Kathir, they're right, you're wrong. Here, let me read what he says. So you threw these people on the bus, ad hominem them, because they're not academics. Well, I'm not an academic, so why are you sharing the platform with me? Well, now let's come back to this. It was common in the speech of our Salaf that they described the books of the people of the two scriptures, Torah. That means Muhammad Ahmad Samira are being more faithful to the historical context of what these terms mean and to Islamic tradition. But that's neither here nor there. We actually forgot the original point. What was the original point? Do you remember what the original point was? when you said nowhere does the Quran confirm the 27 books in the Testament. And I said, au contraire, because let's go back to the point, which was the initial point. That's why I stopped you. It's not because I'm trying to cut you off. When you keep going on and bringing other issues, I got to keep up. Here, one more time. 566. Now I'm going to ask you the question. We're going to go with your preferred translation, Torah and Gospel. Had they followed the Torah and the Gospel, and what was revealed to them? It's not just Torah and Gospel. It says what was revealed to them from their Lord. And then again, it says, tell the people, look, you have nothing unless you follow the Torah and the Gospel, and that God has revealed to you. So I'm going to ask the question, which I didn't get an answer to, at least maybe not to my satisfaction. Since the Quran doesn't just say the Torah and the Gospel, it says Torah and Gospel, whatever was revealed to you, can you now tell us historically, what else did the Jews and Christian have that they believed was revelation to them that the Quran tells them to uphold?
Okay. So firstly, the opinion of the Salaf does not entail that that's what the Quran means by the word. You know, and we recognize this in modern academia, that the Quranic exegesis of the Salaf or whoever it is, there's a big gap between that and what the Quran actually means. Now, the reason why I put tafsir scholars on my slides is not because I appeal to them, but you appeal to them. You cite tafsir all over your articles. You throw tafsir at various people. So in anticipation that you would do that, that's the only reason I have tafsir.
When you had a presentation with Paul Williams, that's the reason why you cited them? Because in your 2-hour presentation with Paul Williams, which I watched this week, reference, you said to him, pre-modern exegesis of the Quran. You mentioned, right? So were you mentioning the tafsir because of me? You had me in mind in your presentation, Paul?
Okay, so the presentation on Paul's channel is an academic presentation. So I made 2 claims. I said, from the academic critical perspective, this is the view of the Quran, which is the view that I put forth. Then what we do is, as an academic activity, you track how was the same issue understood by post-Quranic scholars. So as a good scholar, I showed a Mu'tazili view of Jahiz, I showed a Sunni view of Ibn Taymiyyah, and I showed an Ismaili view of Qadi Nu'man, right? And that's called reception history. I was not telling Paul, you know what, Paul, because Qadi Nu'man says this, you should believe me. I never made an appeal to tafsir. But what I note is that when you argue theologically, and that's what you do, and I don't mean that as an insult by any means, because I have a lot of respect for theology, and I also do theology in some of my published work. So when you argue theologically with other Muslims, you appeal to tafsir. But I find we're quite selective. So when Ibn Kathir says something that's making a mini point that you like, you'll quote Ibn Kathir. But then when Ibn Kathir says, for example, his commentary, Surah 12, verse 111, where he says the Quran only confirms parts of the scriptures of the people of the book that are true, and it doesn't confirm parts that are false, that's my view, you say no, that's inadmissible. So
address that before we go into other points, because you brought up a lot more points.
Yeah. How do you see consistency in your approach of citing, like sometimes like Ibn Jurayj, his opinion on Muhayman, you throw that out, but then you'll find him quoted in another one of your articles about something else, and you'll approve that.
Very easy. I mean, you've studied, you know this. When Ibn Kathir says something that's not in the Quran, and he reads into the Quran like you do, that's when I question the validity of his exegesis, because even chapter 12, verse 111, what you appeal to, I will challenge you to show me in chapter 10. In fact, if Cameron can bring up my article again, I don't know where this guy disappears to. Cameron, we need the article, brother. It's stuck for a lot.
I don't disappear anywhere. I'm right here.
Okay. So now here's my criterion right here. I'm going to show you. 1 second. Let me get it for you. Let me get it here. The reason why I reject Ibn Kathir, because even Ibn Kathir will acknowledge there are others besides him, like Bukhari, that doesn't accept this position, and Ibn Qayyim al-Jawziyah, who is another disciple of Ibn Taymiyyah, which you also referenced at the very last point with Paul Williams, and I have Ibn Taymiyyah. But even Ibn Kathir doesn't have the unanimity of even his contemporaries agreeing with him. And more importantly, chapter 12, verse 111, the context doesn't say only a part of it. Let me just bring it up. Sorry, I just got to bring it up.
No, but Ibn Kathir says it's only a part of it confirmed.
That's his opinion. At verse itself doesn't say it. So when Ibn Kathir clearly is reading his bias into the verses like you have been doing, and the verse doesn't say it only confirms a part of it, but it confirms what is there, Then when Ibn Kathir says, well, we got a problem here, folks. And what's the problem? Let me just get the verse so people see what we're talking about. I got too many articles on this and I can't track with my article.
You do realize that I gave you a very good reason to conclude the Quran is only confirming a part of what is with them. So if I write an essay, and at one part of my essay I say I agree with the views of Cameron Bertuzzi on whatever, and then in the same essay I pick out a particular opinion of Cameron Bertuzzi and I say this I believe is wrong, you would just read the first part of what I said, but you would ignore what I say on page 5, or you would accuse me of logically contradicting myself. I think the most charitable reading, based on the basic principle of charity, if I say I agree with Cameron on page 1, and then on page 5 I pick out one belief of Cameron, he's a Catholic and I think that's wrong, nobody would say I contradicted myself. People would say that you agreed with everything that Cameron says except this particular belief that I called out as being false. The Quran does exactly the same thing. So that's just called a charitable reading. You call it a bias, but I don't think it's a bias to read any text charitably. If I pulled out John 17:3 and said the Father according to Jesus is the only true God, the first thing you would tell me is, well, you need to read everything else that's said in John 17 before you use that against me. I don't see how what I'm doing here is any different.
All right, well, now you understand why I stopped you key moments, because it's fine, I don't mind, but let me go back to your example. Did you hear how you began your example? I've been paying attention. You said, if I said on page 1, I agree with Cameron Bertuzzi on one particular point, I'm just saying what you said. You qualified it. So if you qualified your agreement with what Cameron Bertuzzi wrote, saying, here I agree with Cameron Bertuzzi on this, then I know that you have an agreement in this area, not all areas. But this is where you're begging the question. None of the verses that I've cited make the qualification you do. You make that qualification.
No, the surah does. The surah.
Let's let Sam finish his
Surah
his
2, Surah 2, Surah 4. Both surahs say confirming what is with them.
I'll get to 4. I promise you, every verse you have.
Again, both of them say confirming what is with them, and in both surahs the sonship of Jesus is denied. Now if you think the New Testament teaches the sonship of Jesus, if that's what it means, then the Quran is denying that. It's pretty simple.
Can I address you without you cut me up, because you accused me of cutting you off?
Go ahead, sorry.
Let's go to 12:111, the very passage you cited. Let me enlarge it, because you said to me, and I'm going to quote Ibn Kathir. We're not off of Ibn Kathir yet. I'm going to now use Ibn Kathir to prove my point. So we're not done with Ibn Kathir, and I'm going to get to your assertion of sonship, because even then, we'll get there. Here. However you want. And by the way, I don't know why you made a big deal about between his hands. No one takes that literally. It's an idiomatic phrase. And by the way, it's not just Muhammad Samira. It's Muhammad Assad. Go read his commentary. His explanation
I did.
of that. Okay.
I did, but he doesn't interpret it your way.
And
That's a bit deceptive.
So, Cameron, how come you don't tell him he's cut me off when I'm trying to?
I did tell him.
I apologize. I thought I was being.
I did tell him. Yeah.
111. Okay.
If it happens again, Khalil, I'm gonna have to mute you. How about that?
All right, then you're gonna have to get him out of here. Oh, no, okay. I'm 12.
Get out of here.
And now, remember, folks, what he said, that I reject Ibn Kathir's exposition of this passage. Now, you're going to see why. In their narration, information had been example warning to those of the pure mind's hearts. It was information, speech to be fabricated, but confirmation, forget about between the sands. We're going to forget about that. What was before it. Now, can anyone tell me where this passage says confirming only a part of it, like he and Ibn Kathir stated? Let me read it again. And confirmation, what was before it. No qualification. No, only a part of it. No, only some of it, most of it. That's what you have to do, and Ibn Kathir does, because you're stuck. Because if you take what it says and you agree with what it says, that means it's over for Muhammad's prophethood. Because the Bible that he supposedly confirmed shows he's a false prophet. Now, before you come in with your response, now here again, I'm not alone. I'm going to show you what Ibn Kathir, and he's not the only one, by the way. Ibn Qayyim al-Jawziyah cites al-Bukhari, as does Martin Wintingham, Esther of Muslim Views of the Bible, the first 4 centuries, recommended by someone you like, Shibir Ali. That's how I found out about the book. So I want to see Ibn Kathir, who says only a part of it, with al-Bukhari, who disagrees with him. Here it is, al-Bukhari and corruption. This is his note on this section of Kitab al-Tawheed. By the mount and inscribed book, Qatada said that mastur means written. Yasturan means they inscribe. And Kitab is the whole of the Quran at source. He said, Matal Fuzu, excuse my bad Arabic pronunciation. He does not say anything but what is written against him. Ibn Abbas said, both good and evil are recorded. You harafunna, which is the word where we get tahrif, means they remove. No one removes the works. It's a typo from Aisha Bewley. So it's the words of one of the books of Almighty Allah, but they twist them, interpreting them improperly. So now let's see what Ibn Kathir says about this and what others say, modern and ancient scholars. Let's see. Martin Wintingham, what does he say right here? Just the tradition literature contains few references to textual corruption in the Bible. It likewise provides few references to corrupt biblical interpretation. Al-Bukhari adds a note between hadiths in the section of his hadith collection entitled The Book of Divine Unity. Here he quotes Ibn Abbas. Ibn Abbas, Muhammad's cousin, one of the companions, is commenting on the term yuharifunna, referring to Quran 4:46, the passage you just mentioned, which we're going to get to. Because in that context, it actually proves Logos Christology, contrary to your assertion that the Quran denies Jesus is a creative word, and you said we can bring that up, which uses this term. Ibn Abbas is reported as explaining yuharifunna by saying, but no one removes an utterance from one of the books of God, but they altered it. They interpret it according to the wrong interpretation. Now, this puts those who follow Bukhari in a dilemma, because elsewhere there's a statement attributed to Ibn Abbas that seems to suggest that he taught the Bible's corrupt. So he addresses it. This concerns Quran 4:46, which specifically uses, so by the way, I have the book right here, so people don't think I'm making it up. Here's the book right here. So I'm quoting accurately, so people don't then, I know you know he's an academic, so we know that you know that. He's in the field. All right, so now let's continue. This concerns Quran 4:46, which specifically accuses some Jews of taking words out of their context. The statement appears to conflict with Ibn Abbas's other statement, and that he quoted above, and involving Quran 279, which states that at least some Jews corrupted the text. Notice, some Jews, even if we grant that interpretation. Not all Jews, and it doesn't indict Christians. The two statements could be reconciled if the accusation related to Quran 279 was regarded as only describing a specific group of Jews rather than as a general statement. I'll skip the fact that he brings in Al-Darimi as saying the corruption is interpretation, because I want to go to Ibn Kathir. Watch Ibn Kathir, okay? And Al-Jawziyah quotes Bukhari too, by the way, but I want to go to Ibn Kathir. Here's Ibn Kathir, who in that same passage says, well, it can't mean the Torah and the Gospel they have today, because all the Arabic version shows corruption. Again, begging the question. But here's Ibn Kathir, his exposition on chapter 3, verse 78, which you can read online. He quotes Bukhari. All right, here we go. On the other side, that's Al-Jawziyah, sorry, Mujahid, Al-Shabbi, Al-Hassan, Qatada, and Rabbi bin Anas said that, who distort the book with their tongues, means they alter Allah's words. Al-Bukhari reported that Ibn Abbas said that the ayah means they alter and add, although none among Allah's creations can remove the words of Allah from his books. They alter and distort their apparent meanings. So here you have Ibn Kathir saying, Bukhari cites Ibn Abbas to show the books have not been corrupted, they've been misinterpreted. And Al-Jawziyah quotes him too. But I'm going to avoid that because Ibn Kathir doesn't accept this, like you don't. But I'm not obligated to accept Ibn Kathir's rejection because this statement is actually confirmed by the Quran. Your position is reading into the Quran.
The Quran claims to confirm the scriptures of the Jews and Christians, but also contradicts them. If it claims they are authentic and confirms them, it cannot logically contradict them without invalidating itself. The Quran confirms the original revelation given to Jesus, the Gospel, and Moses, the Torah, not the later textual forms, example, the New Testament canon. These texts, according to Islamic belief, have been altered or partially corrupted. The dilemma presumes the Quran is revelation to critique it internally. However, to interpret the Quran meaningfully, one must use critical historical and theological scholarship. This requires considering the Quran's definitions and context, not imposing external assumptions from Christian theology. If Muslims use the Quran to define what parts of previous scriptures are valid, this appears secular and undermines the Quran's attempt to present itself as confirming earlier scriptures. Christians argue this mirrors the approach of false prophets. The Quran defines the gospel as the message taught by Jesus, not the 27 books of the New Testament or later writings about Jesus. Therefore, when the Quran refers to the gospel, it is speaking about the original, divinely inspired teachings of Jesus. If the Quran directs Christians to judge by the gospel, as in Surah 5:46-47, this implies the gospel was accessible during Muhammad's time. Since Christians used the New Testament at that time, does this not affirm its authenticity? Furthermore, if the gospel is defined as Jesus' legal teachings, how can Christians know what to follow without access to a preserved text? The Quran acknowledges that certain parts of earlier scriptures were corrupted, Surah 2:79. Therefore, it confirms the truth within those texts while rejecting interpolations or fabrications. This allows the Quran to confirm earlier revelations in principle while critiquing specific content. This response assumes the Quran's claim of corruption is true. Christians argue that this circular logic undermines the Quran's credibility because it requires one to already accept the Quran as revelation. It dismisses contradictions between the Quran and earlier scriptures as corruption, which is what false prophets typically do when challenged. Surah 5:46-48 emphasizes following the legal framework of the Torah and Gospel, which aligns with Islamic notions of continuity in divine law. This includes dietary and penal laws. Christians, however, do not follow these laws consistently, indicating a departure from the teachings of Jesus and Moses. The New Testament reflects Jesus' fulfillment and reinterpretation of the law. For example, passages like Matthew 5 verses 17-18 emphasize Jesus' role in fulfilling the law rather than abolishing it. Christians argue their practice aligns with this theological shift. The Quran asserts that remnants of divine revelation are embedded in the Jewish and Christian scriptures, which Muslims are tasked with discerning. The Quran provides a criterion for truth, rejecting any content that contradicts its message. Christians argue this is selective and inconsistent. If the Quran assumes some part of the scriptures are true and others false, it must provide clear, non-circular criteria for distinguishing them. Otherwise, it appears self-serving. How can Muslims demonstrate objectively which parts of the Bible are true or corrupted without relying solely on the Quran's authority? If the Quran affirms that Christians possessed the gospel at Muhammad's time, what was that gospel, and how does it align with Islamic claims? Muslims argue that the Quran's confirmation of earlier scriptures is nuanced, affirming the essence of divine revelation while rejecting distortions. Historical critical analysis, rather than theological polemics, is key to resolving these interpretative disputes. The Islamic dilemma hinges on differing assumptions about scripture and revelation. Christians emphasize the Quran's apparent contradiction in affirming and critiquing earlier scriptures, using this as evidence against its divine origin. Muslims reject the premise that the current Bible represents unaltered revelation and argue for a nuanced understanding of the Quran's claim to confirmation. This debate illustrates the broader theological divide between Christianity and Islam regarding the nature and preservation of Scripture. Both sides rely on deeply ingrained theological assumptions, making consensus unlikely without shared presuppositions. Thank you for joining us for this insightful and thought-provoking debate. We've heard compelling arguments from both Dr. Andani and Shamoun, and the issue of whether the Quran confirms the Bible has certainly been addressed from both theological perspectives. Ultimately, the question of the Quran's stance on the Bible remains a complex and divisive topic, with differing interpretations within both Islamic and Christian traditions. We encourage all viewers to continue studying and exploring these critical issues with an open heart and mind, always seeking truth and understanding. Once again, thank you to our debaters for their time and their respectful exchange, and to you, the audience, for your attention. We hope this discussion has provided clarity and deepened your understanding of this important subject. Until next time, take care and stay informed.